Welcome.
Welcome back. We're back on after a long hiatus. And who are we? What are we doing? What is this?
We're Mariana and
Joe. And why has it been so long?
I don't think it has been so long.
It's been pretty long. It's because we did one before, but one half of the audio was lost or did not record, so that document has been lost to history, which kind of aligns with the theme of this next book of documented experiences being lost to history. So yeah, that last one was the Nicomachean or Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, which was some pretty heavy lifting to read, but it was lost. And but this one is what?
This is a cautionary tale by Ray Bradbury, who's world famous for his what's called speculative fiction, not just sci-fi, but speculative fiction about the burning of books. And I know that it's signed in virtually every high school nowadays as a cautionary tale about all of some of the important themes that Ray Bradbury touches on in the story.
Yeah, I read I worked at Borders Books and Music in high school, and I had a coworker who was this like punk rocker dude who, when I quit, he was always like kind of he wasn't like the friendliest of dudes, but when I quit because I was going to college, he bought me in 1984 the book, and so I've read that one. I read that one, but I never read this one, and yeah, reading it, I did think it would be good for high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have such good comments on this one, if I do say so myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why it's good for high school. It's not a very deep book. The symbolism is pretty heavy-handed, and the moralistic nature and the florid language sometimes is kind of overwhelming. But I think it can fit into adolescent sort of angst and trying to identify who I am and what I want. So I think it probably fits, and it's also very short. So I think that for those reasons, it's a good book for high schoolers. I don't think it's great literature, but I think it's in the, sort of canon because it has been passed down from generation to generation. I read that in high school. You should read it too. It's really good.
Just by using the word canon does elevate your literary cred.
It's indeed
in the ear of many a student.
Indeed.
When you said florid language, what does that mean?
I find it, especially that beginning scene when he goes home for the first night, really, really over dramatized. So that's sort of what florid means. And I found it very cinematic or graphic novelist. It reminded me of Batman scenes with the ripping and the darkness and that kind of very emotional kind of language, over dramatized. That's my main thing. However, it's got this book sort of has peaks and valleys, and it's kind of interesting in that respect. Ray Bradbury, so he wrote mostly during the 50s and 60s. This was high time for science fiction. A lot of writers were writing science fiction, these fanzines and, magazines devoted to science fiction stories in particular really thrived during that time. He was born, I think, in 1920 or so. He's a child of the Depression. And his family moved from Illinois to Tucson and finally to Los Angeles while his father was looking for work. And the interesting point here is that it mentioned in his biography that, and this is all mostly from Wikipedia, that his father earned $14 a week. That's during the Depression. And you may have heard more than once that my father earned $15 a week during the Depression, and he was lucky to have it. So Ray Bradbury, the family settled in Los Angeles, and this suited him just fine because he loved Hollywood, loved it. And all the pictures that you see of him, of course, he's wearing glasses. He had really poor vision, which kept him out of the Army during World War II. In fact, he never got a driver's license because of his vision. So he roller skated around Los Angeles, which is so interesting. He was inspired by H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. And what he said he's quoted regarding Jules Verne. He said that Verne believes that the human being is in a strange situation in a very strange world. And he believes, Jules Verne, we can triumph by behaving morally. So he has a pretty clear and fairly strict code, Ray Bradbury does. And so these stories that he wrote, he's most famous for The Martian Chronicles in the 50s and Fahrenheit 451, written in published in 1953. They're short, and The Martian Chronicles actually are just kind of an accumulation of stories that he sort of fleshed out later on. But he would speak at sci-fi conventions and things like that. He was the granddaddy of sci-fi literature. And he's quoted also as saying, people ask me to predict the future. And in his books, he predicted a lot of technological gadgets and advancements, but he really didn't consider them so much advancements. He said, people ask me to predict the future when all I want to do is prevent it. So he was a bit of a throwback, and most of his stories are highly cautionary. They're they can be pretty depressing. And I think that a lot of that stems from the fact that he grew up a child of the Depression, but with his head in the sky because he loved Hollywood so much. Some of the things that he did predict were, video security systems or security systems that talk back. Something along the lines of Alexa doing what you want with voice commands, wrist telephones, and ear pods in the ear. He called them seashells in this book, and robot tellers. And of course, we have ATMs here. So he was pretty prophetic in a lot of his writing, but always as a movement towards something negative. It was never very positive.
I believe that's called misanthropic. Is that right?
Well, misanthropic, yeah, he just kind of hates people. Anthropo means man and mis means hate. So misanthropic means he hates people. And I don't think he does. I think he just wants to warn people that they're going down the wrong path. So he's not exactly anti-progressive either. But I think that he has kind of a nostalgia for small town America, small town communities, and doesn't like to see technology, although he probably wouldn't be familiar with that word, but maybe, and especially media, run away with the American psyche. I think that's a big deal with him. Those are my own words.
So, honestly, I read this book, about 2/3 of it, yesterday, because one of the urgent driving forces of this book, it's about books being burned and how do we remember things. I wanted to feel the urgency of we have to quickly read this to document it. And actually the online book that I've been renting from a library was 250 pages. So I thought I had a 180 pages to read, but actually the final 100 pages was all commentary and
Right.
different people's analysis of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, this
It's
is,
mythic.
I was like, what?
It is an epic, and it is. It's epic in its place in the canon. It's totally, people talk about him. They talk about what led him to do this. Why did he do that? And it's generated this whole fandom, but more serious, of course, than fandom. I went to the bookstore and bought the 50th anniversary, 60th anniversary of Fahrenheit 451. I love the image on the top with a book a book of matches, or box of matches. Yeah, and I was surprised also that where it ended quite early, only 150 so pages, and the rest was devoted to commentary.
Yeah.
It's taken on a mythic proportion. Yeah.
Yep. So what even is this thing? We got, we're in America sometime in the future. Do they say? I want to say they said it's like 500 years in the future even, or something, like way far.
Well, the only thing that I've saw, I don't recall any particular date, but I did see we've won 2, nuclear wars since 2022, which of course is this year. And that's the only reference to a date that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember seeing any specific date here.
Oh, okay.
Do you think you did?
Nah, I don't know.
And some of it is so, kind of. Well, we'll get to that later. I don't want to jump the gun here.
Right.
So it's a book. It's a short book, 157 pages or so, and it's divided into just three chapters.
Yep.
The Hearth and the Salamander, the Sieve and the Sand, and Burning Bright.
So, what do we got? We're in America. We got a guy whose name is Guy, and his last name is Montag. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a weird name. Do you know what that means?
Yes, I do.
What?
It means Monday in German.
Oh, that's right. And
what
any significance to that? I don't know. Who knows? It's German. They were the bad guys in Ray Bradbury's lifetime.
That's true. That's true. I don't know why he has, but I do think it's significant, and I think it probably has to do with workaday, first day of the work week. He's a working man, and I think it also might have to do with the sort of optimism that he tries to imbue in the story a bit. So that's, and I didn't think about the guy as a guy, because it's a very unusual first name, especially for someone born during this period. Montag, he may have been German ancestry himself. I don't know.
Well, also, like, the bad guys, the Nazis, they did burn books. That was like their thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe
right.
This is some kind of, I guess we're in America, but maybe like authoritarian.
Yeah, we're in America. We're around Chicago. Yeah. And,
okay.
Yeah. But he's not a bad guy, Montag.
Yeah, I mean, maybe his heritage is like the Germans have won, or intolerant authoritarianism has taken over so long ago that burning books and shutting people up is the how we do things, and he's a descendant of like German whatever, maybe. And then like but I was like, okay, I don't care. But then also, like, all the cars they drive are called Beetles, and I thought, what is that? That's like Volkswagen is like the main car of everyone now or something, which is
but I think I don't know. I don't know about that, because I'm pretty sure it was called a Volkswagen Beetle in those days, I'm sure. But Bradbury, we read this other short story, There Will Come Soft Rain, and I see some similarities in what he alludes to in his books and stories. He alludes to poetry more than, in both of those stories. And this is a very small sampling, I'll totally admit. I haven't read very much of him. I'm not a big sci-fi fan. But I think The Hard Shell is kind of what's maybe going on there. He uses the imagery of snakes, mechanical dogs, and he uses mechanical dogs and snakes in this other story that I read also. It's a kind of interesting preoccupation, and what it made me think of were The Hard Shell, and possibly with Beatty, the chief of the firemen, maybe beady eyes, but I'm not sure. I love when names are significant, but I'm not totally sure about this. For example, Mildred. His wife's name is Mildred. Millie, that's just so old-fashioned. And the girl that he sort of befriends is called Clarice. Now, I don't know what that might mean either.
Well, Clarice, I thought, Clara means, clarity. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Well, let's start with the hearth and the salamander. So why is this chapter called that?
I don't know. The salamander is that the name? Is that like their fire trucks that shoots the fire?
Yes.
Like I wasn't even sure.
It wasn't very clear, was it? It was just kind of some of the images, I'm not sure exactly what's happening here. It seems so visual, and it's not really adequately explained. There's not a clear picture painted with the words. So, right, I had to go back and find out what this salamander was. And yeah, it is the fire truck. Of course, what we have here are the firemen are not the men who put out fires anymore. They are the men who burn things with their blowtorches and their suits, and the salamander is their symbol. So I had to look that up. And it seems that salamander, there's symbolism with salamanders, rather mythic. It is believed in mythology to withstand heat and flame. That's not what occurred to me. What occurred to me is that they're cold-blooded. But, they carry out their tasks rather cold-bloodedly.
Yeah, there was an old Nintendo game where one of the bosses you fight against was like a fire salamander, and you're like, well, that means salamander means water. Why would it be fiery? But maybe there's some kind of a religious or mythic origin.
Or this book has such mythic aura about it. The Nintendo game, which probably came after 1953, the book was written, is probably refers back to Fahrenheit 451.
And also they're talking about they have these lighters. They've got these lighters. So that was the thing where it's like, well, he sparked open his lighter. Like that's how they would. I'm like, okay, well, is that how they do it? But then I'm like, well, I can't tell. Are they just like dudes who just start fires with a hand lighter, or they've got this giant tank fire blaster? It was like,
sure, but they have to light the gas, right?
Oh yeah,
whatever the fuel is, they have to light it. Right?
Yeah, that too. It was all these different images of like liquid kerosene being shot out, and a truck that shoots fire, and these hand devices. I kept like kind of depositing all this imagery, like, okay, maybe this will be more fully explained later. But then it kind of, it never does. I'm like, wait, what?
No, that's what I mean by very cinematic. He's got, you can sort of, some of the descriptions are ample enough so that you can picture it. You could see it on a screen, right? I mean, you could imagine putting it on a screen some way, but he doesn't do a really good job of explaining his own vision. He was a screenwriter, by the way, later on, or at some point in his career. So he loves Hollywood. That's significant that he sees his books in visual terms, kind of.
Also, I think he has a salamander tattoo. Like,
The firemen.
yeah, there's
do,
like there's
right.
an emblem on their hat, and then they have tattoos. And yeah, it was like you had to manage all these
That's their symbol.
things.
That's their symbol. It's sort of like, how in this day, in Ray Bradbury's day, men in the Navy would go and get an anchor tattooed. It was an emblem of their belonging to that group, that society. And the hearth and the salamander. So in this chapter, Montag goes two places. He goes to the firehouse and he goes home. So the hearth is about home and what it's like there.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think is going on there.
Yeah, he's got his work. He's feeling secure, but then his wife, it's kind of a pain in the ass, as they say. She just like all she wants to do is watch TV or these crazy multi-dimensional wall screens where it's ambiguous if she's just like watching a show that interacts with her too, if it's all scripted, or if it is actually a Star Trek style holodeck stories that the actors really do play off the humans who are in their home. And Guy Montag is like, this is, I don't care about any of this, or like, who cares? Or
Right. He's just completely not connected to that at all. Well, there's no indication that she ever leaves home. There's no indication she ever leaves home. And she's got three wall screens in their, quote, parlor. She considers the characters on her programs, her family. She calls them her family all over the place. And she wants that fourth screen, which, when you think about it, would literally box her in completely.
yeah.
I think that there's a certain amount of interaction with the programs, but I think it's more like mail merge, like just at a very basic level, like, what do you think, Mildred? Or don't you think so, Millie? Or something like that. I don't think that there's any deviation or any input by the viewers of these programs at all.
Also, it writes about how, like, suddenly it was a beach, and suddenly we're in a car driving, and then suddenly we're, like, somewhere in the air. So it's like also a crazy psychedelic, I don't know, virtual reality thing.
Which is constantly changing, which has to do with the sped up nature of their life. Everything is fast. Everything has to be done quickly, which he goes into detail when we meet Beatty.
Yep.
But it's interesting to me that Montag works nights, first of all, and on his way home late at night, he meets this 16-year-old girl, Clarice, and she challenges him. She challenges him because she's odd. First of all, she's out late at night and she's only 16. And she talks to him. And of course, his wife doesn't. His wife just watches her programs. She's not interested in anything he has to say. And she just wants to maintain an even keel in their life and work on getting that fourth screen.
Yep. Yeah, Clarice like talks about how like she's she represents like nature and lots of that, I guess, florid language of smelling the wind or hearing the whisper of the air, lots of these kind of it was noticeably like all right, come on, like the chill of the grass, things like that, and you're like, wait, those don't, well, whatever. Like, it was like enough to distract me enough that I'm like, whisper of the wind, like to pause like a little bit and then keep going. Where by the end of the book, you're like, okay, this is getting annoying. How much everything can whisper.
Yeah.
But she, they start becoming friends.
Because she asks him a question. She asks him, "Are you happy?" Which brings us to Aristotle.
Oh.
Which brings us to Aristotle's, the goal of life is to be happy. And she asks him, if he's happy. Nobody's ever asked him that before.
Yeah. Yeah, I've already like forgotten all that. Like I'm definitely I was on board with the book up to page like 60 or something. And then as this book warns, as it kept going, which we'll get to, I started like subconsciously started deleting this book from my mind because I was almost like, oh, this is a good one. And wow, it's like 250 pages. But once I realized like, oh, this is like 150 pages. And wait, how is this all going to wrap up? Wait, what? Then as I realized like, this is like not going anywhere. And as I was getting kind of annoyed with him, I started like archiving the beginning of the stuff because I don't really remember it now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's almost like, he was known, these Martian Chronicles, apparently, they were just short stories that he fleshed out. And I got the feeling that he was fleshing this out also. And he's not a great writer, but he does, as I said, there are peaks and valleys in this book. And he does do some things just right. So what I found really florid prose was when he goes in, after talking to Clarice, he goes home, and his wife, Millie, is in bed with her little shells in her ears, and he accidentally kicks a pill bottle. And so he knows that she has tried to commit suicide by taking sleeping pills.
Yeah.
And that was just the reaction to that was just totally over the top. It seemed to me. I just wanted to say, just turn on the light. Because it was all this darkness and everything.
Yeah, like lots of moonlight. The moon was being a moon, and there was light, and yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was too dramatic. Didn't it strike you as kind of a Batman page? It certainly did me.
I remember that towards the end when I was more typing out my like wanting to like spit out my comments, like I'm writing like wow, this guy really likes this chase scene, or this guy really likes explaining how running works. Like he likes writing how the mechanics of legs work. Like and one part is like, and then he put one leg farther in front of the other one, and the knee bent forward and the foot crashed to the ground. I'm like, yeah, I know what running looks like.
Yeah, it's kind of like, interesting, huh?
Yeah, and as I was like, you have like 20 pages left. You're using like space on this? Like, what are you doing?
It feels padded, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess. Just like I was like confused by the end. But so his wife I guess she tries to commit suicide, but that's never addressed either. Like, was that really accidental, or she really didn't realize? And he also is like, well, who cares? Because these people come who suck the medicine out of her stomach, and she's just brought back to life. Thanks to technology.
And give her a transfusion. Yeah.
And she doesn't even remember the next day.
No, she does. There's no acknowledgement of that. However, suicide is mentioned throughout, that the guys that came to pump her stomach said, oh yeah, we get 10 of these a night, and so that's pretty telling. And Clarice also talks about her classmates, they kill themselves, or they kill each other. It's really a really peculiar society, because you've got people walled in by their screens and being kept, passive by just receiving all this input. And then you've got people committing suicide and fighting each other and having car accidents, really violent sports where they're watching the mechanical dog chase which animal is the mechanical dog going to eat first, the chicken or the rat or this thing. And then you've got this constant threat of war all the time. The bombers are flying overhead. So it's a very disjointed and another word that I come across when I'm looking at stories in this era is fragmented society, very fragmented.
Yeah, like we have that big scene. She almost dies, and then like later, it's discovered he actually keeps some books. That's the big turning point. Like, oh, I actually have some books, and she freaks out. Like, what are you doing? What about our life? And he's like, let's just read them. And she's like, all right. Like she just goes along with it.
Oh, I know.
And so then you're like, okay, right. So that means they are best friends, or they are like life partners. And then later it's discovered he has the books, the game is over, and she just runs out of the house with a suitcase, and we never see her again. So that's how that's how the writer manages her out of the story.
But not only that, when her neighbor friends come over to watch Screen with her, and he has sort of a psycho meltdown here, and he reads them this partial, I must add, poem.
Yeah.
Mildred had predicted or knew this was going to happen, so she had her story prepared. She tells the ladies, oh, the firemen are allowed to bring home a book, and then they have to turn it over, but it's okay. She was clever and came up with a story before he has this psychotic break and decides to read this poem to her girlfriends. It's
right.
Very peculiar.
But then, like, yeah, Clarice has all these like intimate scenes talking about, life and history and what does it all mean. And then she's dealt with that she's just run over by a car off camera somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And it's so you're like, what? And that even Guy is like, wait, really? That, like, it's almost like he's asking on our behalf, like, is that really what we're doing? She's just dead. Is there someone has the script here? Is this an old one? She's really just dead. And then they're like, yeah, that is it. That what you have is it. Like, all right, well,
if you say so, just okay.
What are we doing? What scene is this now? Okay, all right, okay.
And he could have made something of that. He could have, had disappeared. People disappeared all the time. People disappeared, and we never know what comes. But he doesn't. He just, she's just gone.
Well, there's like kind of another bizarre like middle finger sent straight to me at the end, where Guy is running from the cops and a car almost hits him, and he remembers like, oh, maybe that's the car who ran over my other friend. Anyway, we're gonna continue jogging to the end of this story. It's like, why reference that lame end of an arc from before with who cares about that? Or it was like, huh? Yeah, it was almost like, remember when you cared about this story when and then, like, anyway, we're going to go to the end.
Well, in the hands of a better writer who develops rather than just suggests, it might have been, better. And maybe the movie is better. I don't know. But he does shine when he's home and sick, and the chief, the fireman, comes, Beatty, and he gives a really succinct, straight, clear to the point summary of what has happened and how the firemen got started. And that starts on page 51 and goes to page 59. He just waxes, he lays it all out for Montag. He says, when did it all start, you ask, this job of ours? How did it come about? Where and when? And Beatty just gives him the whole historical progress of all of this. Everything got shortened, condensations, digests, tabloids, everything boils down to the gag, the snap ending. And that's absolutely true. In the 50s, Reader's Digest was a popular magazine where they condensed articles. You could even buy Reader's Digest books where you got 5 books in one volume. They just took out all the extra stuff, I guess. And he says, speed up film, quick, click, pick, look, eye, now, flick, here, there, swift, pace up, down, in, out, wide, all that collection of words. And what we have now with politics, One column, two sentences, a headline. Now we have the term soundbite. And it's exactly, he's predicting this, and it's exactly what happened. With shortened messages, we've got Twitter. There was a limit to the number of words you could have on Twitter. On page 53, he talks about school is shortened, discipline relaxed, philosophies, histories, languages dropped, English and spelling gradually neglected. Have you sent a text message recently? Yes, indeed. This is true. This has happened. Zippers displace buttons, and a man lacks just that much time to think while dressing at dawn. See, he didn't know about Velcro. I know he thinks zippers are the worst thing, but actually maybe Velcro. And all of this emphasis of sports, which the Romans, of course, would describe as bread and circuses, right? And just keep the people occupied, keep them pacified. I don't understand why the backdrop continually through this book is this war with these bombers. I don't understand that. It's more like 1984 in that respect.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I was like, I couldn't tell if the war is like, is that going to happen, or is that happening, or I don't know. I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. It's mentioned. It's not developed. It's a throwaway. It's sort of like the car. She got hit by a car. A better writer would say this is how they get rid of people, or a better writer even would say, oh, if it's a heart attack, that's CIA. If it's a stroke, that's FBI, that kind of thing. But no, he just kind of mentions it, and he doesn't develop these ideas very well. But that whole passage, page 51 to 59, where Beatty lays it out for him, that was pretty good. Now I felt like I had something to chew on here.
Yeah, that's when I was like on board. I'm like,
right.
Oh, we got a good one, because
right.
Especially like you said, the sports thing. I'm like, oh, well, we're totally in that, where there's so many people who just are left behind that they'd have no interest in anything or in things like intellectual, that they'll continue into their like 30s and 40s, like fighting, like punching and boxing and like wrestling, and because that's what they're interested in. And it's like, well, yeah, that's what kids do, or they compete with to feel validation or feel competitive success. But that's because their minds literally can't comprehend, the more adult topics. So we're totally in like a phase of where we all have to suffer. Like, no, fighting is totally a valid thing. You're just jealous you can't do it. Like, I have no interest at all in wanting to know how to like subdue someone, or other things that are like ancient practices that like hunting, or I don't even know. It's just like, it's so like that stuff we're totally in. Like, right. They're just frustrated people who can't compete with like intellectual things, so they'll just stay. They'll take these like other things to the highest level they think they can.
And he didn't know. I guess he had no idea about video games, because I see that as even more. I see that as more a part of the culture than even sports, video games. And with the sports things, you're on a team, organize the sports, make the hours and all that kind of stuff. But with video games, that's totally interactive. You're closed off, you're in your own little world. And of course, he didn't anticipate people watching and commenting and making lots of money on it too.
Yep. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
So yeah, that's when I was in. I'm like, oh, we got a live one here.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's something happens where Montag, they go to burn somebody's house down, and a lady just says like, yep, just burn me up too. I'm not gonna leave. So then he steals a book and burns her up, and then now we see he's going to the dark side of being a reader.
So it was kind of funny that he takes these books he has several books hidden behind his grate, air filter grate or something. And he doesn't know how to read them. He just picks them up at random and starts in the middle. He doesn't know how to read from beginning to end. He doesn't have any idea what he's reading. It's really, it's sort of like a monkey picking up a book and, kind of leafing through it and reading words out loud, but not comprehending what they are.
Yeah.
So he decides he needs a teacher, right?
Yeah. And wow. So then I got like a feeling when it was like, and then he picked up the Bible. And I was like,
no.
I was like, wait, what the
What
hell?
the
Like,
heck?
what are... And I was like, when we're fully on board with that captain's speech.
Yep.
And now he's like, and then I found the Bible. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh
wait,
no,
you're
triple underlined. Why did he have the Bible? Why is it the
Yeah.
Bible?
And then the writer invents an old man character. Like, remember that one guy you saw one time somewhere?
Oh, yeah, that was about a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I thought, like, and this was after, and then around here, Clarice is killed, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, is this paper due like tomorrow morning now? And now you're like scrambling to just put something together.
Yeah, that was a very Deus ex machina. Oh yeah, I met that man in the park about a year ago, and he stuffed something under his coat. Oh, I remember. He's an English teacher. He could be my teacher.
Yeah. And then so he finds him. He just goes and gets him, and that guy's name is Faber.
Yeah. Now, what do you know about that name? Anything?
There's a publisher called Faber or something,
Oh,
right?
really?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Maybe I'm thinking of, there's like an eraser company called Faber or something.
No.
I think there's like
Oh, no.
I want to say that there is, like when I was in school, a Faber eraser was a thing.
I don't know. Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Faber Castell. Yeah. Yeah, they have a double name eraser brand. Faber Castell eraser.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
that's all.
heaven's
Anyway,
sakes. That's hysterical. I didn't know that. I think it's German too, isn't it?
probably.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. So Faber, he's an old man. He's an old English professor, but I did find his Montag's journey to his apartment, to Faber's house or apartment, was kind of interesting because he goes in the vacuum train. He goes in like the subway. And there is a jingle playing for this like toothpaste stuff, and how that jingle inserts itself into his mind, and he tries not to be distracted by it, but he's so inundated with the media that he absorbs it. He absorbs it without even wanting to. Okay, that was kind of a little bit of an interesting passage.
Yeah, I have that. He almost loses his mind, like on the train.
Yeah, yeah. See, he did have this little epiphany when he is trying to figure things out, and this is before he goes to Faber. He decides, he does this almost a syllogism. We have everything, but we're not happy. What's missing? Well, the only thing he knows for sure that's missing is books. So it must be books. Ah, how ironic that he's the one that burns them. So he goes to Faber. This is his second teacher. His first teacher is Beatty. Here's his second teacher. He's got to have this mentor thing going on here.
Yep. And there's a whole thing about how he's like touching the books. Feel this book. Feel the texture. Feel the pores. Feel the like, and that I remember that. He says that something like one thing missing is that we don't have leisure time to think. Something like where everyone's always running around and consuming and listening and watching, but there's no like leisure. That meant where you just would think about something. And they come up with a scam that we should put books into different people's firehouses, and then they'll blow themselves up or something. And Faber's like, hey, that's a good idea. I can't even believe I'm talking about this. I've been just being a wimp in my little house all this time, and you're getting me all charged up here.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, this something could happen. This old man and one guy are gonna go to war against all the fire trucks and firefighters or fire makers.
The guy's little two-way earpiece. Don't forget, Faber it created this little green thing that Montag's supposed to put in his ear so they can talk to each other. He created one.
Yeah, and that's where I was like really starting to be skeptical. Like, what? Like, this feels like a story I wrote, like in eighth grade, where some like yeah, like, well, how do we get home? And don't worry, I've got this special rocket pogo stick. And like, well, why didn't you whip that out before? And he's like, I didn't know you. And I would write that. I didn't know you wanted it. And it's like, oh, but I've had it the whole time. And so then they've got this plan to go to war with the firefighters. He's got his earpiece. He's listening, and that's when he spills the beans and I guess runs into his wife's friends. And Montag like insists that they just hang out or something. That they don't watch the TV. They don't have the shows on. And they're talking. They're like, well, let's talk about politics. And one of them says, well, what are you thinking? You don't run a short guy against a tall guy. And then that's what triggers him to whip out the book. Okay, you idiots. Mm-hmm. You're all going to listen to this here book right now. And then one of the ladies, she goes crazy upon hearing this and says, oh, what are you thinking? Can't you see what happens when you say words at someone? Yeah. It makes them upset. And he goes on a diatribe like, think of all your divorced husbands and your other husband who was killed and your third husband who killed himself and how you've had abortions.
Yeah, she's just a whore.
And how your kids don't even like you. Mm-hmm. Now get the hell out before I kick you out.
That was a little interesting tirade there because no subject of marriage has never come up before. The subject of abortion never came up before. There was no, inkling that this was going to be the criteria for judging this woman, that she's been married too many times, she's had abortions. Yeah,
and it's just like, where is all this hostility coming from? Mm-hmm. He's got this plan, and how is he whipping out the book when the guy says, we've got it, this plan is secret. What are you doing? And it's, he's so pent up, he just goes apeshit at this random lady.
Yeah, it just as a kind of psychotic break, right?
And that's what I'm really like. This is maybe when I checked how much farther is there in this book. Like, what is he going to do? And then I realized, like, it's like there's like only 80 pages left. Like, what the hell? This is only half the size
that it was.
Like, you bought the book, but it's like it's not till you might get home. You're like, this is only like half a book.
Yeah, exactly. And that speaks to, I think, the mythic proportions that this book has taken on. That they're selling this 60th anniversary edition and with all this commentary in the back. And the commentary is not even commentary. The stuff in the back is like it was published and it looked like this in 1952 or this, he changed the name to that, or it's really fandom here going on.
Yeah, there is an intro.
But mine had an intro. And there is an intro which was pretty cryptic. It was very cryptic.
Yeah, that intro is by another writer who's known for, like, I don't know, sci-fi or something, and so he half talks about himself. Like, when I like it, well, I remember when I was a boy. I'm more used to intros now that completely talk about, like, I don't know, I want to know about this guy, Bradbury, but because I didn't get it in the intro where it should be, and I'd finished his book already, I'm like, I'm not gonna find out about this guy.
Right.
You had your chance.
Yeah, you blew it. But I'm more upset with this. First of all, choice of a poem by I think Matthew Arnold wrote this. It's a Victorian poem called Dover Beach. It's about England, and he only quotes part of it. Sea of Faith. It's on page 96. Sea of Faith is the beginning of that first line. It's not the title of a poem. And, it's about the idea that in life or in society or in the world, let's say, faith recedes. It comes and goes like tide. and sort of right now they were at a period where faith in God, there's literally faith in God, is receding because it was, the Industrial Revolution and the Victorian Age, all kinds of scientific breakthroughs were being made, a lot of scientific exploration, not space, but, at home. And then the second stanza here, it says, let us be true, all love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a hand of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy nor love nor light. It's just a call to, okay, if we can't have faith in God, let's have faith in each other. But why does it fit here? It doesn't even, it just seemed to be picked at random, like the book fell open on this thing, and I don't know why exactly this was chosen to be put in here.
Yeah, I remember that thinking, like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So far, he did really well with Captain Beatty and his 9 pages there, where he puts out what really happened. But Faber, Faber's idea, he says there's three things are missing in the world today. One, books. Books have quality. So when he's talking about the pores, he's sort of talking about warts and all, the details in the books. They tell you everything. They're not going really quick. They go in depth. And 2, leisure. That means time to think and digest about what you've just read. But the third thing that's missing, and this seems so out of place here, is the right to carry out actions based on what we learned from interaction of 1 and 2. So, we have to have ideas and we have to have time to digest them. And then we have to have the right to carry out the actions that we've just digested from having time to read the books. It's not pithy. It's not clever. It's not interesting. It could be so much better. It just seems to me that I don't quite get it.
Yep.
But the next segment is good.
You mean he goes back to the firehouse? He goes in and they're playing cards, and then they're like, okay, you came to your senses. Everybody does this. They realize, what are we doing? Now hand over the book. And, he's got Faber in his ear, like Yoda whispering Jedi mind tricks to him. He's going to try to tell you something. And
don't listen.
And Montag is like, oh, it's working. I'm being convinced as he's being spoken to, when he knows he's seen people burn alive in their houses, and like, oh, I'm being convinced the other way again. Like, it's just like, what? Who is this guy?
How does he convince him? I
don't even remember.
Well, I'll tell you. He has this kind of imaginary quote off. He quotes from all these writers. That's what Beatty does. Oh, you're going to say Shakespeare says that, and I'm going to say, well, Matthew Arnold said that. Now, how does he know all that?
He's making it up. I don't know.
No, he's a secret reader himself.
Oh. I thought he was a bullshitter because he said something a long time ago that, like, hey, it goes all the way back. Benjamin Franklin was the first firefighter, and I thought that was his thing, that he knew some names and he just drops knowledge that he just like randomly throws together himself or something.
No, because part of this thing about not reading is losing your memory, right? So there was no reason for him to remember something like that unless he read it. So and I'll tell you why I think this is true. So Beatty, they're in the firehouse and they get a call. And where does it take them? It takes them to Montag's house to burn. Because it seems that Beatty wants to, end this and end Montag with it. He seems to be a real enemy here. And the rest of chapter 3 this is Burning Bright, is pretty much the chase scene, right?
Right.
But here's what's interesting. When he's Beatty seems to be ready to set fire to Montag's house. And what Montag does, he turns the blowtorch on Beatty and he burns him up. And he burns up the other firemen. And he burns up the mechanical dog also, which he's also afraid of. And runs away. And while he's running away, he decides, Beatty wanted me to kill him. He didn't try to protect himself or fight back at all. He wanted me to kill him. And so that added to this quote off that Beatty was able to imagine in his mind and discuss all these writers, and the fact that when Montag was sick and he wanted his wife to call the captain to tell him he was sick and wouldn't come to work, then he missed his he was already late for work, and Beatty comes. He comes in a car that says Phoenix. And I didn't think anything of that until Beatty, Montag runs away. He goes to Faber, and they brilliantly manage to avoid these mechanical hounds that can hunt him by wearing Faber's old clothes and going in the river and get him off the scent completely. And he meets these men at the railroad tracks, which is where you would see hobos during the Depression. What do they call themselves? The Phoenix.
Call themselves the Phoenix.
And they're a loose organization that memorize these books, and that's how they're going to continue. They're just going to try and memorize the books and hope that people see the light and they'll get over this, the way of the world right now, and they have faith.
So was the captain was a part of that or something, you're saying?
Well, I think so, yeah. Deep undercover.
Oh. I was already just like, I'm not into this anymore. Yeah. I don't know why. I just couldn't. I have a passage here where he writes, during the running scene, he began to shuffle idiotically and talk to himself. And then he broke and just ran. He put out his legs as far as they would go, and down, and then far out again, and down, and back, and out, and down, and back. God. He dropped a book, broke pace. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Explaining what running is. What the hell? It was like, why did you set up, what was the point of the green earpiece thing? It's a big deal. Then it's just broken.
Yeah. And then gone. It's the only one. I don't have any more. I can't make it. I don't have any supplies.
Yeah. What was the point of finding the teacher if you're just going to not do what he says at all? And screw him. Well, you go find your teacher, then you're going to screw him up because now they're going to be after him. And it was just I was like, okay, we got this hero arc going, and we're supposed to think from the beginning his wife is kind of this dumb, just
airhead,
show watcher. And I'm like, this guy's kind of the bigger dumbass here. I think the wife is the smarter one. Maybe the story should have been about her because he's kind of a dipshit. And so then, so now he's found these three dudes. We're all, hey, welcome. We saw you on TV. You can join us or whatever. And then how are we going to wrap this up? Well, I guess we're just going to drop a nuclear bomb on the whole city. And, that's it. I think he just nuked his way out of an ending to this book. Is that what happened? A bomb dropped on the city.
Yeah, and the people that are outside the city, these men led by Granger, that's his third teacher, Granger, he just says every time the Phoenix burned himself up, he rose from the ashes, and we'll just keep remembering. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, so the moral of the story is, if ignorance is taking hold, just hang in there. And yeah, the whole like in Guns, Germs, and Steel, the victory of humanity is that we all have instincts that are encoded in our DNA, but we have a huge advantage that we can literally pass information from generation to generation. So you don't have to do what this guy did. You can actually do other things. And so, but the moral of this story is that, yeah, hang on to your stories, what you got, and we might just have to wipe everything out and start over again because we're too screwed. Like that's what I thought the final thing is like, well, there is no conflict. Conveniently, all the opposing citadel has just been vaporized by a nuclear bomb, and now we can begin again.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I didn't think of that. I just thought, he's stuck in this Depression era, hobos next to the railroad tracks having camp. It's of mice and men time here, and that's the hope for the future. He doesn't say it's the common. Well, they're all intellectuals that have lost their stature, but really, oral tradition. Back to oral tradition. Remember this. Memorize it, because if Joe Smith dies, you're the only one that knows Ecclesiastes. Yeah, it's very unsatisfactory. I found the ending very unsatisfactory. There was no solution, and the ending was pretty depressing.
Yeah, there was another like a kind of confusingly bad thing that he writes when he's running away or trying to escape, which is the whole ending. With an effort, Montag reminded himself again that this was no fictional episode to be watched on his run to the river. It was in actuality his own chess game he was witnessing, move by move. So this lame character has to convince himself that this is real to him, almost as though he also can realize how lame this is, and how I'm like, why am I still reading this? And the narrator advises his own character, like, no, just keep going. Something's going to happen. I swear. Like, this is going to be good. You got to keep going. This is real to you. To the rest of us, it's just a stupid story. It's like, well, why are you?
Yeah, it was very, I think, unsatisfactory. But there was, during the chase, there's a couple of things I want to talk about or bring up again. One thing is, I thought it was pretty exciting. I thought the chase was kind of exciting, in spite of myself. I thought it was pretty exciting. And I found that image of him running around between the houses, but he could see these giant screens inside the houses. He could see himself, or he could see himself being pursued, or he could see his pursuers. So I think that again was very cinematic, and I think that would be a compelling image in a movie. I liked that image of being able to see where his pursuers were by looking in the houses with their giant screens. I thought that was kind of fun and kind of interesting.
Yeah, there was a funny thing where the broadcast company is telling all citizens to just look out their window at the same time, and then somebody will probably see him, and he's like,
I know.
And he's like, I can hear you too, so I'm gonna hide exactly when you tell everyone to look.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. And I'm like, why was that even in there? Why even say that? Like, that's like what I would do in my 7th grade stories. Like, he took out his banana shooting rocket gun, but luckily I have my banana catching backpack. And it's like, why even introduce the banana gun if you're going to immediately say like, yeah, but I've got this ice cream banana split making machine myself or something. It's like
here's another thing you would have written in your 7th grade story. When he meets up with these guys at the railroad tracks, he said, the Granger, I guess it is, says, all of us have photographic memories, but spend a lifetime learning how to block off the things that are really in there. It's like, what? What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. Right.
So
I don't know.
You're thinking, how are these guys going to memorize books? And they all have photographic memories. Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is the mechanical hound.
Yep.
We first meet that mechanical hound in the firehouse, which, there's a tradition of Dalmatians in the firehouse and firehouses having dogs. But this dog does not like Montag. So even though he's got this pretty primo job as far as status is concerned, he doesn't quite fit in. He doesn't gamble with them when they throw rats and chickens and stuff like that to see who the dog's going to get first. And then the dog comes sniffing at his door when they're secretly reading. He and Mildred are secretly reading the books. Apparently that was sent by Beatty. And then the dog, the mechanical hound, is chasing him too. I mean, this is like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? These guys are escaping and they call in the hounds. They bring the hounds out it was a motif in that time. But I have to say, I did find that hound kind of menacing with its little needle sticking out. It was so small and dangerous. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, they got. It was they got this dog, and I'm okay. The dog. So they start the fires, and they're not really supposed to kill the people who are there. So I guess, and they do say later that the police like arrest people or something, or like you're under arrest.
Yeah,
but
for having books. Yeah,
but is the dog brought along to stab, like, street justice? Like, we're gonna burn your house down, and this dog is gonna take care of you, or I wasn't really sure.
Yeah,
I was
don't
like,
know.
wait,
I don't know.
Is the dog police, and we just start the fire, or it was I wasn't sure.
Again, it was something that had potential, and then he didn't develop it. I mean, it's a cool thing, sci-fi wise, to have this mechanical hound. It was menacing, and it makes sense to have a dog in the firehouse. That makes sense, but it could have been more. But it's just kind of thrown in there, and it's not. It's just mentioned. It's not developed. I found.
Yep. So I give this book a 3 out of 10 or something.
Ooh, out of 10. Whoa.
Yeah,
I think it's a little bit better than that, but I'm glad I read it just to have read it, but I wouldn't read it again, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
Yep.
I punished you, making you read this.
Oh yeah. So how do we deal with the Aristotle business? Do we?
Well,
impromptu. I might have to read it. I got to read my notes over again, I think.
Yeah, we can deal with it. We can just sort of summarize next time. We can summarize what we took away from it, and what we found, what we questioned, what we didn't understand, or, something like that. Let's do that next time. You have to review your notes.
Similarly, that book by Aristotle also was like good in the beginning and then just crashed and burned as I continued. Like, the ending was just, you get why it's not the bulk of videos or, talks about it are mainly about the beginning of the book, and then they just don't really talk about the rest of it.
Well, it brings up an interesting point because I remember reading a book by Barbara Kingsolver. I think it was called The Poisonwood Bible, and my impression of that book was it should have ended like 100 pages before it did, and you just wonder if these books just sort of run out of momentum, and they suffer from not having strong editors. And maybe the writers, this was early, Fahrenheit 451, I think. I'm just wondering, I think Kingsolver was a pretty well-known writer by that time, and so probably her editor left her alone, but it would have benefited from some strong editing that's saying this is repetitive, or this doesn't fit, or you're going on too long. And I'm wondering if that is one of our takeaways from reading in general. You have to look for the good things. So this book had a lot of valleys. I think it had a lot of potential that wasn't fulfilled, but it did have some peaks that were good. So that I found. I found that to be true.
Yeah. Well, I got our next book.
Oh, you do already, eh?
The next book is the first time going to be a book of short stories by brilliant legendary short story writer V.S. Pritchett. Are you familiar with Sir V.S. Pritchett?
How do you spell that first name?
V.S. I don't know what his name is. V.S.
P-R-I...
Sir Victor Sawdon Pritchett. He was born in 1900 in Ipswich, UK. Is that England? I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was as I was consuming the New Yorker podcast, I I heard this. There's a podcast where they read. An author will read a short story that they like, and so the guy read this one, a one by this guy called V.S. Pritchett. And so this book is called Selected Stories. It's 14 short stories in there, and it is a doozy, like 340 pages. But I read one or two of them, and yeah, they're like. I went like, whoa, the short story is like suddenly a very major thing. I thought like, why read a mini story? Just read a real one. But these ones are like, I was like, whoa, I'm convinced. This is you're just like, you are just put in this situation and you just have to catch up with who's doing what and why. And then it ends and you're like, well, what happens? And you don't even know. So yeah, this guy is really crazy.
Okay,
so
Selected
that
Stories
is the next one.
Okay, I'm up for that. I've only been teaching short stories for the past 5 years. I mean, reading and discussing them. I've never heard of
Sir
Pritchett.
Victor Sawdon Pritchett?
No, but I've generally focused on American short stories. Students seem to prefer those. So we don't read very many British writers at all.
Oh, pish tosh on that. So, well, looks like you got some homework to do. Time to put your helmet on.
I do. Put my reading helmet on and read that.
No more high school American lit, easy A stuff. Playtime is over. Time to, put on your thinking caps.
Oh, okay. You snob. You're a total snob. Okay. Well, then we'll just read Pritchett. Selected Stories. 300 pages, huh? 14 stories. Good Lord.
Yep.
That's a lot of stories.
Yeah,
You want to split them in half?
No. It's called Book Pod, not fraction of a book pod.
All right.
Well, thank you for listening, and we'll come up with the Aristotle podcast subsequently.
Soon.
This is Joe signing off.
And Mariana.
Catch you later.
We will see us here together.